Hi, I'm Patrali, Assistant Professor of Marketing at IIMB Bangalore. Here at IIMB, I teach courses in market research and quantitative models in marketing. As far as my research is concerned, I work with firm strategies in the field of pricing and advertising under competitive markets. My pet research projects, one or two that I'm working on right now, they look at how when we play with ad formats with firms under competition, how do they affect customer behavior, their perceptions, their awareness for the different brands, and so on. So I'll talk about one or two of those projects today. I'll first try to explain what I mean when I say ad format. A firm may choose to talk about its own brand and just completely ignore competition whatsoever. We call these comparative advertisements. Let's take an example. Let's pick the over-the-counter pain medicine market where an ad could go like this. Brand X is effective yet gentle. If the same ad is said in this particular way, brand X is effective yet gentler than brand Y. This is a comparative ad. This is an example of a comparative ad. And what is happening is brand X is actually sharing expensive media space with a competition, brand Y. Now, at this particular minute, you might have a lot of questions popping into your head. Let me pick one dimension, which is the awareness level of consumers about the two brands X and Y. So what if brand X is more popular than brand Y, or brand X and brand Y are both new entrants or are both entrants in a new market? Would the dynamics be different? So a lot of research has gone into competitive and non-competitive advertising, studying their effectiveness and ineffectiveness over the last 50 years. What is interesting to me is how comparative ads can make a customer or potential customer behave very rationally. They don't take the ads as is. They start evaluating the claims that are being made by the brands, the sponsored brand, the brand that is featured as the challenged brand in the ad. So with comparative ads, consumers start evaluating the brands. So you know, when this is normal human nature. So what happens is a consumer would, instead of taking the ad claims as is, start evaluating the credibility of the claims made. They would think about the past positions that the brands have enjoyed in the market, the claims that had been made in the past, the perceptions they hold of those brands in their heads, and the claims that are being made now. So all these, when taken together, would tune the effect that the ad would have on the consumers altogether. This is very different from generally what happens when a non-comparative or a self-promotional ad is played, especially in a non-durables market. So what we see when we model this effect, analyzing the credibility of the ads effect of consumers, is that it has an impact on the expense that is required for the firms to be made in these particular ads, which we say of comparative advertisements. So actually what we see is, when effectively done, comparative ads result in the requirement of lower ad expenses to be made by firms in the market. And this is overall. So if one brand plays a comparative ad involving some other brands, the overall expenses required in the market would come down for all the brands that are involved directly. This is very different from what has been seen in past studies. And we see this difference because we are modeling in the effect that consumers become more rational whenever they're exposed to any form of comparative advertising. When are these effects more pronounced? If we are thinking of a market where the brands are not so similar, so one brand is a market leader, the other brand is a new entrant, or a high quality versus low quality brand, and the low quality brand is the challenger brand, and they have something interesting to offer. Or when the market is fairly new to comparative advertising, that's when the customers will be instigated to start evaluating these ads more. So in that case, comparative ads would have a very pronounced effect on the required ad expenses. The effects are not so pronounced when the opposite of this happens. The comparative ads are very rampant in the market and customers have already lost interest in such ads. We could also reference ads to past ads. Instead of referencing it to just competition, we could reference it to past ads and what we call sequels. We are all aware of film sequels. Ad sequels are just like film sequels, but they are in ads. And what's happening is we are following up a past storyline that an ad had played earlier, and we are continuing with the present ad. Generally, if it is played by the same brand, it has what we have seen through experiments, it has a very nice effect on the awareness levels of the sponsored brand. It also does have a very nice effect on the preference for the sponsored brand among consumers. But a sequel, when it is played by a competitor, so what I'll do is I'll definitely not highlight your brand's saleable features, but I would actually spoof the storyline that you had played earlier, and I would play my ad. It is actually another attempt at comparative advertising, and I would use the storyline to bring down or bring up the saleable features of my ad or the saleable features of your ad. So in such scenarios, again, we have seen the effects on recall are pretty good. Effects on preference are good sometimes, not so good sometimes. So some research that we are doing at present, what we are looking at is we are testing the moderating effects that time has on the different types of ad formats on the firms that are, on the brands that are involved in competitive market scenarios.